Welcome back to Yerushalmi Demai. We are paying Shishi Halachav, which is Samach Halachav base. We're talking about the Chaim Maestros with fruit, which is owned by partners. Chaim Shekiblis Asadeh by Risus. Either two people receive a field by Risus, so they are sharecroppers in the field. They're shutzvim in the fruits of the Chelek of Risus, they get percentage. Oisha Yarshu, or they inherit a field and they become partners in it. Or they bought the field together as a partnership and they're now dividing up the fruit, which is still tevel, right? I don't know if that air conditioning is on or not, but it can affect my breathing actually. Is that? Yeah, I think so. We'll make it just a bit lighter. I don't know what level it's on. You can tell the second one. You take the wheat in that place, and I'll take the wheat in the other place. You take the wine in this place, I'll take the wine in the other place. That's not a problem of selling tevel, and that you're changing the share of tevel with your friend's share, because we're holding of breira, and we're saying that at the time of the chalukah, it comes out that the bit that each one's getting was his from the very beginning. You follow? Aval, the Mefarshim ask, we've heard elsewhere we say ein breira, and this seems to say yesh breira. There's machlokes tanaim about the din of breira. So some want to say, our Mishnah is talking about a case where they divide the tzvur when it was still growing, and then we can say that the bit that each one took was the bit that was his from the beginning. But if they divided the tzvur when it's detached, then we will say ein breira, and we can't say what they take now was the bit before, because the shutvus was on the land. So whatever grows in the chelak of each one is his, and when they're detached, then it gets divided up. We can't say breira if it was already detached. Okay, let's carry on. We should not say, you take the wheat and I take the barley. And you take the wine and I take the oil. That looks like you're selling tevel. You're swapping your share with your friend's share. Because with two species we can't say yesh breira. You can't say, it works out from the beginning. This one was all his. The wine was all his. The oil was all his. We can't say that. So Chav and Amoritz and their father, who they inherit their father, who is an Amoritz. They get Yerusha as Demai. Demai, you can't sell it to an Amoritz without taking Maisa first. The Chav can say to the brother, who's the Amoritz, you take the wheat in that place, I'll take the wheat in this place. Or Ata Yayin, you take the wine in that place, I'll take the wine in this place. That doesn't look like swapping your share with your friend's share, like selling Demai. Why? With one species, we say yesh breira, right? And it comes out from the beginning that chelek that each one took was the one that was his from the beginning. The Chav shouldn't say, you take the wheat, I'll take the barley. You take the pears which are mursha to receive tumah. And I'll take the dry. Why is that? Because with two minim, we say ein breira. That when the father died, the chelek went to each of them in each min. Right, and therefore they're swapping between them their portions, and therefore it's considered as if the chaver is actually selling Demai, so that's why it's a problem. Now, as we said, the side din of our mission is that yesh breira. We bring machlokes tanoim. Tani we've learned Yisrael guys should come to Sadeh b'Surya. If they buy a field in Surya, they're potter from trumas and maestros, the fruit that grows there. Hareu ketebel. Sorry. You can't do Sadeh b'Surya. Yeah. Where a field of a guy in Surya is potter from Trumas and Maestros. They buy it with a partnership. So the fruit that grows in this part, in the shared field, hareu katevel v'kimausa. So it's like chulin muravin zebazeh. Basically, you have Yisrael's share and you have a guy's share who they bought of produce in Surya. Now, it's basically the chelek of the Yisrael is tevel, the chelek of the guy is chulin, and we say ein breira. So they are mixed one with the other. Divrei Rebbe. Shimon Gamliel argues, he says, Yisrael chayav. Yisrael's chelek is chayav. Chelek guy potter. And the guy's one is potter. So we say yesh breira. And when the Yisrael takes his share in the fruit, it turns out it was his from the very beginning, and is chayav maestros. Right? Whereas the chelek that the guy took that was his from the beginning, and therefore it's potter from Maestros. Rav Yasef Shem Chanina, Ma Peligin, what are they arguing about? They divided the field, the Yisrael and the guy who took this produce while it's still connected to the ground. Right? If they divided the produce after it was already cut and it's been stacked up, he will agree to Rebbe. Each and every stalk is a partnership, and that everyone holds a brera. You can't say yesh brera lemafreya only when you're dividing it b'mechuba, right? Because it's not muvra lemafreya for each one is sharing the land. But when you're dividing it b'talush, then it grows all over the place. You can't say it was a huvra that what you took is what was yours all along. You can't say that. Oh, Rav Yonah said, Rav Yosef, Shem Rav Yochanan, Ma Pligin, what's the argument? So we said, a similar member as what we said before, when they divided the field when it was still growing. If they divided it when it was already now it's bundles that's been gathered together after the cutting, it's not been stacked up yet. But after Shem Gamliel made it a Rebbe, you will agree to Rebbe, it's all a partnership, every single piece. Now, what's the difference between the member of Rav Yonah, Rav Yosef, Shem Rav Yochanan, and Rav Yasef, Shem Rav Chanina? So one said when it's detached and when it's stacked up, and the other one says when it's bundles, it's still considered too late. It's all considered belonging to everyone. He says, Adated Rav Yonah, according to Rav Yonah, in the name of Rav Yochanan, Ma ben Gadish, Ma ben Amarim. What's the difference between they divide it when it's stacked up, or they divide it when it's in bundles? Rav Yonah, he changed the Lashon Rav Chanina. He says Chokei Gadish. He used the Lashon Amorim. There must be some difference. Otherwise, why would he mention it? What's the reason for the difference? So the answers Yekaisa Koshehu Meineach Lefanov. So Rav Yonah used the Lashon Amorim to tell you not only if they divide the produce when it's already in a stack. So Shem Gamliel holds ein brera because they've already moved it from its place of growth. It's now got mixed up together. But even if they've not moved it from its place of growth, so they cut it a bit, and then they tied it up there and then, in that place, where it grew. We still say ein brera, because it's not connected to the ground, it is now detached. Rav Chanina, however, he said the Lashon of Gadish. So he held that if you divide the produce when it's still at its place of growth, it's as if they divided it still connected to the ground, because it's not yet got mixed up, and it stayed in its place. And according to Gamliel, we'll say yesh brera lemafreya, that whatever share each one gets, that was the share that they had all along. Oh, Rav Aisha said, Hadad Tema, that which we said, there's machlekes from yesh brera, that's only shekanu when they acquire the field amanas shalai lachlek, with the intention of not dividing it between them, and later on they change their mind, divide it. So that's where, according to Rebbe, we say en brera. So the original acquisition was the intention of not dividing. If they acquired it from the beginning, amanas lachlek, in order to divide it between them. If Rebbe by Shem Gamliel, Rebbe will agree to Shem Gamliel, the proportion he gets is what was his from the very beginning. So he's saying, according to everyone, yesh brera, because if they acquired it in order to divide it, each one acquired from the beginning the chelek that he ended up getting. You follow? Now Rabbi Yossi proves from other Amoraim who argue on his svara of Rav Oshia. They argue actually on the svara of Rav Oshia. So Rav Oshia has just told us what? If they took it on with the knowledge to break it up with the intention of dividing, then where it's considered divided. So Rabbi Yossi is going to prove from other Amoraim who argue on this. They hold according to Rabbi, I'm afraid it doesn't help. Ein brera, even if they bought it with the intention of devising. Rabbi Yossi, Milander Abana Plegin from the Amoraim, they argue on Rabbi Oshia. Rabbi Yochanan, Achin Shutvin, brothers who inherit the nechosim of their fathers, the shutvas, and they divide it between them. Machlekes Rebbe from Shem Gamliel is Machlekes Rebbe Shem Gamliel. Why? According to Rebbe, we say ein brera, okay, and therefore what they get now is not what they had all along. And Shem Gamliel holds yesh brera. The time the division, it comes out that was the division all along. Now Achin Ashutvin, brothers who inherit, right? Surely their intention is they're inheriting their father. Their intention is divide it up, right? That from the time they inherited, they're going to divide it up. And still, it says Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rebbe, we say ein brera. And the same thing if partners buy a property, buy a field. Although they acquired it in order to divide it up, according to Rebbe, it will be ein brera, and it will not be like Rav Oshia. So that is a clear question against Rav Oshia, you see clearly that even Achin or Shutvin are considered, when they buy it, they're going to inherit it, they're going to divide it up, and still we say, Ein Breira. Okay. The truth is, there is a difference, really. What's the difference? When people go into partnership in order to divide it up, so we say, okay, they have an intention to divide it up, they make a choice, we'll buy it, we'll divide it up. Fair enough. However, when they inherit something, it doesn't, maybe, should we say Breira? I mean, why do we not say that there should fit in each part? I mean, maybe it's like thrown on them. It's not as if they've gone out of their way to divide it up, but it's been given to them on a plate. Now, maybe, which other way, maybe we could say it's not really down to them, but they'll obviously divide it up, right? Maybe, so that's the thing here. He says,
it wasn't like an all business arrangement.
It wasn't a business arrangement. Yerusha came from his own accord. It's not Tale V'dasa Yoshim. Maybe we should say Yesh Breira, or maybe not. I don't know. He says Yerusha doesn't really depend on them, but the din Torah is they should divide it. So each one has a chelek. So therefore there would be Breira, possibly. Each one gets the share that was his share. It's not the same as where they get together without the intention of dividing, where there should have been every chelek. Alright, let's carry on. Halacha Zayin. Ger the guy. Sheyoshu esavien hagoy. So a ger and a guy who inherit the father who's a guy, and in the nechasim the father who's the guy, there were things which are forbidden to get benefit for Yisrael. For example, avodah zarah and yain nesach. So the ger doesn't want it. Yachol u'lo can tell the other brother, you take that, turn out avodah zarah, v'ani eto somebody, I'll take the money. Or ato yain nesach, you take the wine, ani peres, I'll take the fruit. You're not over this, I know, from avodah zarah and yain nesach, because they've not yet come into the ger's reshus. So he's not yet acquired them. It's not as if he's selling it to his brother the guy. If the avodah zarah has already come into his domain, he's acquired it, then he can't swap it over with the brother. Also, he can't swap it to get for money, whatever it is, because then he's better getting benefit from his surya. No. Amoicha peres l'surya, and Amoris is selling fruit to Surya, and most of the fields were nachrim, where the fruits in Surya is potter from Trumas and Maestros. But Ama, and he says, Mishal Eretz Yisrael, this is from Eretz Yisrael, which is Chayiv Trumas and Maestros. Chayiv la'aseh. The one who buys it has to take Maisa. The seller is believed to forbid the fruit, like an Eid Achad, who's believed with Surya. Right? So he wants to say, it's from Eretz Yisrael. Okay. But if, however, he says, Musarin Hain, if he adds on Musarin Hain, so they're from Eretz Yisrael, but Maisa has been taken, then he's believed. Never. You don't have to take Maisa when you buy it. Even though he's an Amaretz, which you would think he's not believed for Maisa, you can trust him. Why? Because he was the one that told us it was from Eretz Yisrael. So the whole obligation to take Maisa came from him. Yeah. And he is saying, well, actually, you don't have to take Maisa. Yeah. This is a Pesha Asa, but Pesha Hitir. Yeah? The one who forbade is the one who's allowing. He told us it was Eretz Yisrael. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have assumed. Yeah. It was being brought abroad. So since we're going to answer it based on him, and only based on him, that it's Eretz Yisrael, then he's believed to allow it and say, well, actually, Maisa has been taken. And similarly, if a seller says, Mishaliyeh, they grew in my field in Surya, Chayiv la'aseh, the buyer has to take Masechet, because fruit of Yisrael in Surya is Chayiv b'Maestros, and the Moicha is believed as far as the Isur, like Eidach and Amvisurin. If then he says, Musarin Hain, actually Maisa has been taken, Ne'eman, he's believed, even though he's an Amaretz. Why? Shapesha asa pesha itzir, the one who forbids, the one who allows. But im yaduhu sheyesh lo sada b'Surya, if we know the seller has a field in Surya, so we know without him telling us, then when you buy it, chayav la'aseh, you have to take Maisa on the Paris, even if he says they're Mu'usa, because even without him, that with knowing the fruit where it's his fields, we would have had an obligation to take Maisa, was if we know that he has one field in Surya, which is chayav, wherever you buy from him, you have to take Maisa.
How do you know? He could have bought from somebody else to sell.
He's saying, what's he saying? That they're mine, he says. The Issa is only based on his words, he's Amoritz, he's not believed to say that they are Musa. Because we know anyway that he has land there. Right? We know he's got land there. Okay, now, the first part of the Mishnah, a ger and a guy who inherit their father who's a guy, We bring a price. He saw the guy shekada beisa shel guy. He saw the guy who acquire a house of a guy with all that's in it. Yerushalmi Demai Daf, avodah zarah, the money. Yisrael can't tell the guy, you take the idols, but I'll take the money, because then it's like you're selling him these things which are asava no. It's not only avodah zarah and we are money. They're completely different. They're like two different minim. We say ein breira. Let's say the Balabais had two idols. One is made like of wood, like an image, and it's got a place to put other kelim inside. It's a sort of cupboard image, right? You've got other things you can put inside it, and it's not made for avodah zarah, and it's mutter to get benefit. And one which is forbidden because of avodah zarah. Yisrael can't tell the guy, you take the one not made like the cupboard, and I will take the one made like a cupboard, and I'll use that for my own things. Even though it's one min, you can't do it. It's because one is asabana and one is permitted. And you might have thought, yesh breira, and it comes out whatever I take was mine all along. But we still say no, it's forbidden. There are two different types, and we say ein breira. Rav Zir said, but yos, and that's right. Because if a chaver or an amaretz who inherited their father who's an amaretz, you have fruit which is susceptible to receive tumah, right? And it's actually become muksha. The liquids have come on it. Or peres she'edem you have other fruit which is not muksha. Do you honestly think you take the muksha ones and I'll take the non-muksha? You think you can do that? Of course you can't. So even though all the fruits is one min, and there's no difference the only difference as far as receiving tumah, they're considered as two. And we don't say breira. And same thing when it comes to giving out these images. The one is all osabana, and the one which is permitted by na is considered two different types. Therefore, you can't say you take that one, I'll take this one. Now, after the Gemara finishes the din and the brisa, they ask on our Mishnah. Now, our Mishnah seems to argue on this brisa. It says, "Gab a guy who inherit their father who's a guy. You are allowed to say." You take the avodah zarah, v'ani ma'is, I'll take money. You take the wine, I take the fruit. And why does it say in the Brisa that Yisrael guy who acquire a house from a guy, the Jew can't say, you take yain nesach. But in our Mishnah, where it's a ger and a guy who inherit the father as a guy, you can't say, you take the avodah zarah. So the Gemara says, if you want, we can explain for yourself the end of the Mishnah. You'll see there's no Mishnah arguing on the Brisa. Because we learned in also once they're in your domain, they're forbidden. Once you've acquired it, it's yours, you can't swap it. So here in the Brisa, where you acquire a house from a guy, so they've already acquired it. The Kivin Shekana, since they acquired with the Kiddy, they acquired everything in the house, as if the Is has gone in his domain, and he can't swap it with the guy, with his partner, the guy. Achilas Hageh. Rabbi say this word Achilas. Sometimes the Gira says unkulos. Some say it is the same unkulos, who translated the Torah into Aramaic. Some say there were two different people. The Archilus translated the Torah into Greek, and unkulos translated it into Aramaic. Right? Okay. So Archilus Hager, Chilek, he divided up the Yerusha of his father, the guy, Im Achiv, with his brother the guy, and there was avodah zarah. V'hach me'alaz, he was strict on himself. V'hoilech ha'noya liyam malach. He threw the benefit of the avodah zarah into the Dead Sea, and he threw it there, as we'll see. Talasa amorim. 3 amorim argue on this. Chad amar, one said, Demai avodah zarah hadach liyam malach. The value of the avodah zarah he threw in the sea. He took the money, and he left the avodah zarah for his brother, and he threw the money value into the sea. The other one said, the value of his share in the idol, so maybe half of it, which was his share, then he inherited. The other one said, he took the actual avodah zarah and threw it in the sea. He left his brother the money. He was machmir to do this, even though min hadin he would have been allowed to take the money for himself. And it's a chumrah, in order to get rid of the avodah zarah from his father's house. Okay. Now when it comes to the end part of our Mishnah, when Amoretz, who we know has a field in Syria, you have to take Maisa on the fruit that you buy from him. He's not believed to say they're Amorasa, and it sounds like he's not believed to say that the fruit was he's selling is from the fields of Goyim or Chutz, which are Pasul. So Taman Taninan, we've learned that whether this is Halacha Ches or not, it's pretty different case. Sorry, here. There's a mistake there. Okay. Taman Taninan, we learned in Peah. Aniyim who's an Amoretz, Ne'emanin Alalekeh B'Shikha B'Lapeh B'Shatan. At the time of the harvest, they're believed to say on the tzvur that they have is lekeh, it's shikha, it's pear, it's potter from maestros. At the time of the harvesting, these gifts were always found in the fields, right? The one who buys it is potter from taking maisa. And here you're saying this. So why in our Mishnah we're saying Amoritz is not believed to say that Paris is Mishal Goyim or Chutz La'aretz, which are potter from maestros. But Aniyim are believed to say that Paris is lekeh, shikha, pear, and it's potter from maestros. So why is it we believe that Aniyim and we don't believe this person? So the answer is Tamar over there. Shesikase patul, Ramhacha shesikase Chaim. The lekeh shikha peah, but even without the ani being quiet and saying nothing, we would have assumed the fruit is potter from maestros, right? It must be lekeh, must be shikha, must be peah. It's potter. Here, right? If you have your own field from Syria, had he not told us, we would have obligated a maestros. You follow? The status quo is we would have obligated maestros. And Mistama, the fruit that he's selling, he brought from his own field. Since he's an Amoritz, he's not believed to take maestros. So that's the difference. That what would be the situation without him telling us anything? So in the other case, we would have assumed it's potul, whereas here it's different. So the Gemara brings up support for this answer. The Tani came with an Eshus Patul, that which had he been kept quiet, everything the parents would have assumed to be Patul, Ne'eman Lahachme. He's believed to be strict if he says they're Chayiv. Lefichach, therefore, Pirusha Lahaka, that if he says they're Patul, Ne'eman is believed, because even without his words they would have been Patul. And that's like our answer. The Amoritz is not believed to be Mekel, unless it's in a place where, even had he not spoken, the fruit would still be tahor, would be patur. Okay? Tanu, a guy showed Sevach Va'ima. A guy cries out and says, come take fruit from me. Peres Azakain. They're fruit from a field which is guarded, which is a good fruit. Now this was during the Shemitah year, where really you make the fruit hefka. The fruit that you've guarded over here was not hefka and it should be forbidden. Or he says, Peres Alahain. They grew in the first 3 years. Or Peres Nesravayin, which grew in the 4th year, which you have to take to Yerushalmi and redeem it. Eina Naaman, he's not believed to answer the fruit, because we say we don't believe him. He's only saying it to improve his merchandise, right? Because the fruit of a field which is guarded, or from the first 2 years, let's say for planting a tree, are very good quality. But Imam, he says, Megai Pliny Avesim, I brought them from the fields of so-and-so guy, and we know that the fruit of that field is also, let's say Allah, Ne'eman Lahachme. He is believed to be strict, because here you can't say his intention is improving his merchandise. Divrei Rebbe. A guy has got no ne'emanos with this v'heta, even Lahachme. So what do we say? If he said it's from a guy, I brought it from a guy, and we know that fruit was all also, then he is believed to be strict to answer it. And the Chachamim said no. There's no nemanos there at all. Even Nachmir, right? Rabbi Yudin asked, what about Hayat Saveach Lefi Tumai? Now what Lashon have we got here? Hayat Saveach, some say Masiach Lefi Tumai. So basically he didn't say at the time when he's selling the fruit. He happened to say, someone asked him during some shmooze, someone heard him. Now, do we say we have to be worried, or do we say no, he's not believed? So he wasn't actually telling us, he was telling someone else by chance, speaking about it, right? I got from so-and-so guy, or whatever it is. So is he believed when he happens to say he was caught off guard telling someone about it? Do we have to be worried to be machmir, or not? Rav Yudin says, Kuti Kagai. Is a Kuti got a din of a guy, even lahachmir, like a guy, that his words are not helping at all? Or maybe he's believed to be machmir, like the din of Yisrael. Okay, this Palgun. We got Machlekes Tanaim in the Brisa. If a Kuti got dinner of a guy, we Yisrael. Kuti could go. Divrei Rebbe. That's Rebbe's view. Shmuel Gamliel, Omer. He said Kuti ki Yisrael l'chol davar. So they're actually arguing the main din of a Kuti. Is he like a guy? Is he like Yisrael? And the same with Ne'emonos. If he's Yisrael, he's believed to be Machmir. If he's like a guy, then he's not Ne'emon, even Machmir. So that's the question. Now, if we know the guy has a field, or the person has a field in Syria, then he has to take Maser. That is, he only has to take Maser if we know that most of the payers that he brings into this storehouse to sell are from his field. So then we say the fruits that he's selling came from his field, and his Chaim Maestros. But if we don't know, It could be the fruit he's selling is from other people. And it's like other payers in Syria, which is potter from Maser. It's only if we know it's coming from his field. But otherwise we don't know. Yisrael Shahaya Oris for Syria. Yisrael had a sharecropper in Syria, and he gave the Oris to work. The Oris was an Amoritz, who was not believed on Maestros. But Shilach Lai Peiros, and the Oris, the sharecropper, sent fruit sown in the ground as a gift. But Amali said, you know, mice has been taken. So he sent him fruit, and he said, mice has been taken. And the Omer, I say probably, Minashuk Lokach, from the market he bought it. Right? Not from the field. So it's potter from Maestros, like the fruit which comes from the fields of Goyim in Syria. Providing that species you find in the market, and therefore you can say, yes, you got it from the market. And not only when he doesn't have the species that he sent the Toxodeu into his field, so then you have to say he bought it in the market. Even if he has that same species in his own field. Since you're going to also find it in the marketplace, you're allowed to eat it without taking maser. Right? We're not worried that he bought it from his field and it's Chaim Maestros. So what we said, if it's in the marketplace, you can say got it from the marketplace, yeah? Even if he had that species in his field, since you find it in the market, he's allowed to eat it without taking maser. Okay. So why are we lenient here? The Chiyuv Maestros in Syria is only with Rabbanan, so we may call out doubt to say that it came from the market. Right, okay. Let's carry on. Halacha Ches. Amorais Shomer Lechaver. Amorais tells a Chaver who's believed on Maestros, Kach li agudas yerek. Please buy for me a bunch of vegetables. Or he says, Kach li kluskin echad, one loaf. Then lekeach stam. And the buyer buys these things stam, without saying that he's buying it for other people. He just buys it. Pato, he doesn't have to take maser. Right? He's acting as a shliach for the Amoritz. He doesn't have to take maser. But if he bought these bunches and he told the seller, this one, zu shali. This bunch, this bread is for me. The zu shachavera, this one's for my friend. When it's arvu and they got mixed up, chayav la'aser, he has to take maser, not that just what he took for himself, but also what he gave to the Amoritz. Afilu, hey male, even the bunches of the Amoritz are 100 against what he bought for himself. So even if he bought 100 bunches for the Amoritz, and one bunch for himself, and they get mixed up, got a mixture of 100 against his share, he has to be mafresh maestros from all the bunches, right? Including those that he's giving to the Amoritz. So he has to take meiser for the lot, because the 100 of the guy or whatever, or the other person got mixed up with his. Maznisa, our mission which says a chaver who buys peiros for Amoritz is not chayv to take meiser unless even if he didn't say who he bought them from. That is Rabbi Yossi. The tiny Ribla, Tanakeh Stam, a chaver who sent from an Amoritz to buy fruit. And he buys it without saying who he's buying it for. He doesn't have to take maser before they give it to Amoritz to Rabbi Yossi. That's the view of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Sarech la'aseh. Rabbi Yehuda says you do have to take maaser on the fruits before you give it to the Amoritz. Now what's the machlokes? Manak yomin. If the Amoritz told the Chaver, go and buy me fruit. Shluchayu, he's his agent. Right? He's an agent of the Amoritz. They were never his. Of course, he doesn't have to take maaser before he gives it to the Amoritz. So why does Rabbi Yehuda hold he has to take maaser before he gives it to the Amoritz? It was about a case where the Amoritz told the Chaver, Seil lekach lecha, you go and take for yourself fruits for me. So you buy it for yourself and then give them to me. Then they were his all along. Shalayim, they were his all along. So of course he has to take maaser before he gives it to the Amoritz. So why does Rabbi Yossi hold he doesn't have to take maaser before he gives it to the Amoritz? Allah, he says, what are we talking about? The stam. So the Amoritz asked the Chaver, bring me a bunch of vegetables, or a loaf of bread. And he didn't say, that, are you buying it for me from the beginning? Or maybe you're buying it for yourself and then give it to me afterwards? You follow? And a Chaver, when he buys the fruit from the Moicher, he didn't say if he's buying it for himself or for the Amoritz. So there's an argument. The seller wants to give over the fruit to the purchaser, who's the Chaver, and the Chaver acquired the fruit first, so he has to take maaser before he gives it to Amoritz. Rabbi Yossi says, no, that wasn't the intention of the Moicher. He wants to give it to the Balamois, he wants to give the fruit to the Amoritz, okay? And therefore, the Chaver never acquired this fruit. It was acquired from the Amoritz from the beginning. So there's no chiyuv on the Chaver to take maaser before he gives it to the Amoritz because it belongs to the Amoritz all along. So the din of our Mishnah that a Chaver who buys fruit in the market doesn't have to take maaser before he gives it to the Amoritz who sent him, even though he didn't say at the time of the transaction he's acquiring it for the Amoritz. That is like the view of Rabbi Yossi. Now the Gemara brings the end of the brisa, which tells the nafkamina, other also nafkamina between Machos and Rabbi Yossi, lefichach im nasan achas yisera. If the seller gives an extra bunch for the same price, he gives the lekeach of the shliach who's acquiring the fruit. Rabbi Yossi says that no, it belongs to the shliach and the one who sent him. They divide it up. Machava she does it, Rabbi Yossi. We have a contradiction within Rabbi Yossi. It goes against his din, what we said at the beginning of the brisa, because Tamam, the beginning of the brisa, says that the seller, his intention was to give the fruit to the one who gives the money, which is Mshalach. And here he's saying this bunch, the additional bunch, belongs not only to the Mshalach, but also to the Shliach as well, and also to the Mshalach. So what answers, in this situation of these extra bundles, through the money of the Mshalach, the Tircha of the other one, the Shliach, the Mekach becomes the Mekach becomes like the Moichas giving this extra bunch. Shnei Cholkin, they divide up the bunch. The additional bunch gets divided up. So what's this again? What's the answer? Here in this case, through his money and his bother, then that's what makes the Mekach, as it were. Right? And therefore they divide it up. Whatever's extra they can divide up. Okay. Now we said a Chaver who he's going to Namoritz to buy vegetables. He doesn't have to take maaser on them. Now, if he swapped the money that he received from the Amoritz and he bought fruit with other money, he does have to take maaser before he gives it to Amoritz. This tells me when you give money to someone else to guard it, and the shomer swapped it for other money, and he lost it, the shomer is reliable, is responsible to make it up. Yeah? So you give money to someone to guard, and the shomer goes and swaps it with other money, and then he loses it, that shomer is responsible. Okay. Then we said, if a person buys, let's say, 2 bunches, or 2 loaves, and Amalai, he tells the seller, this bunch, Zushali, this one's mine, Zushachaveh, this one's for my friend. They get mixed up. You have to take maaser also on the other one. Now another situation we have to take Maser also on the parents you're giving to Namaretz, even if they don't get mixed up. Shmuel said even if they don't get mixed up, the Chav has to take Maser on the lot. The Machalek B'Yadav, where he's dividing for the Amaretz the bunches in his hands. He's not allowing him to take for himself. You follow? He's dividing for the Amaretz these bunches while it's in his hand. He's not allowing it, he's not putting it down. So this situation is if you're selling to the Amaretz his chelek, and even if they're not mixed up, you are hired to take Maisa before you give it to the Amaretz. Okay? Rabbi Lazar says, Vahu. So if the Chaver is dividing up amongst the Amaretz, let's say these loaves with his hand, he has to take Maser, that's only Shanata Chalka Basof. He took his share at the end. So first he gives out the Amaretz shares, then he takes for himself his share. So in this situation, it's considered the Chaver as if he's selling to the Amaretz his chelek. So even though they don't get mixed up, he still has to take Maser before he gives it to Amaretz. However, in a situation where the Chaver took his share first, and then the Amaretz takes his share, then he does not. The Chaver doesn't have to take Maser on the share of the Amaretz. You hear that? So if the Chaver, when do we say? When is the din? If you give the Amaretz first, you have to take Maser, right? It's providing you give the Amaretz first. Okay. But if you're getting your share first, and then the Amaretz comes along, you don't have to take Maser on his share. Rabbi Yonah said, in order that the Chaver should take Maser on all the fruits of the Amaretz, there's a need with the Tanai that Shmuel said, the condition of Shmuel, and also the one which Rabbi Lazar, which we just quoted Rabbi Lazar. So only if the Chaver is dividing the fruit, the Paris, to an Amaretz, and he's getting his share afterwards, then he has to take Maser also on the Chelik of the Amaretz. If, however, he divides the fruit in his hand, but not al chelka b'tchila b'yadav, not al chelka b'tchila, he took his share first, and tzarich la'aser, ela al shalai, he has to take Maser on his own portion. And lo chelek b'yadav, if he didn't have to, he divided with his hands, and he took his share at the end, not al chelka b'soif, ela ma'aser ela al shalai, he only has to take Maser on his share. Okay, now we've learnt in the Mishnah and the Gemara that when a Chaver buys Peres, right, in a marketplace for himself, and he gives it to Namaretz, he should take Maser first, right? You're giving Peres which was acquired first, but when you buy them as a Shliach for the Amaretz, you're allowed to give it without taking Maser first. Because from the beginning, it was acquired for the Amaretz. You're just a Shliach to go and buy it. So the Gemara brings a brayso that talks about something similar, talking about Balabais who's paying for food that his worker acquires. Tani will learn to the brayso, you can tell your worker, who's an Amaretz, he left dinner there, take this money, Achol buy, go buy some food. He left dinner there, take this money, she say, buy drink with it. You don't have to worry. He's not worried about his reward. So we don't have to worry the worker, might use the money of that wage to buy Shemitah produce. But you don't have to worry the pearl might buy fruit which is not meisered. Maybe the pearl will buy wine. Since the Balabayis is you're not what's happening. You're just giving the money to the pearl. He's doing with it what he wants. You don't have to worry he might buy something which is also. But if the Balabai sells the worker, go and buy yourself a loaf of bread. I will pay back the shopkeeper. Or and you buy yourself wine, and I'm going to fund it. I will pay the shopkeeper. Then you have to worry that wage. You have to worry about shvius, so since the balabais himself is paying for this food, as if you're buying it from the shopkeeper, the food that was already there and given to the worker. So you have to be careful not to do it in a way where there's a chashash that the worker will buy shmita produce or peris which is not meisered or yain nesach. Okay. Rav Zira said, it's like the balabais, it's like you're giving food to the pile, because nasa chemeni shlucha shebalabais the zakas lepile. That shopkeeper is just your agent to give the food to the worker, and since the chemeni gives to the worker this food based on shlichus from you, it's as if you're giving that food to the worker. Rav Hila said, in this case, as if you're giving the food to the worker, because poel zacha lebalabais is because the worker, like he acquires first the food, Michel Chemeni, he's getting it first from the shopkeeper, right? And then he then goes and acquires it for himself. So he's saying the balabais is acquiring the food first, not that it's an agent. You the balabais are buying the food first, and the worker goes and acquires it from you. So it's as if you are the one, you're giving the food to the worker. Now the Meister of Zir and Rav Hilla, they both agree. In this case, it's considered that the balabais is the one buying the food, giving it to the worker. So he has to be careful that he shouldn't buy foods which are also. So the Gemara asks, what's the difference between these two explanations? So one says you're his shliach, the other one says no, you're buying it and then he's buying it off you. So the answer, the difference between them, if the shopkeeper was a cheresh who's not got das, according to Reb Zira, the balabais is considered as if he's giving the food to the worker because the shopkeeper is his shliach or the balabais. Lo chashash. In this situation, the balabais doesn't have to worry. Maybe they'll buy foods of Isur because ein shlichus lecheresh. That shopkeeper can't be a shliach of mine because he's a cheresh. Al-Da'ated Rav Hilla, that the balabais is considered the one who's giving the food to the worker because the worker is zaycha in the mezonos for the balabais. In this situation, chayshish, the balabais has to worry. Maybe the pearl will buy food which is forbidden. Okay, to be continued.